This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
So Todd sent me a text. Go ahead. Did you see my response?
I did.
So go ahead, tell him what the text says.
I said Neal was ready. He asked if Steve and I were.
Are we?
More ready in the first segment.
Oh, well, I was ready in the first segment. I got the usual Bizarro World stuff, but that's okay. like, why are we talking about the fact the Sixers didn't wish the Eagles luck? Who cares? We care about the dumbest things. We got to stop caring about dumb things. Right. Okay. This half hour brought to you by Brewers Outlet. Now, that's caring about something. Don't you think, Todd? Super Bowl's coming up. You need to stock up. Imports, domestics, microbrews, best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, stack. Roasted peanuts freshen out every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. Might I recommend to Matt Crown Royal, High Noon, and Jack Daniels? What do you think? Just to kind of settle him down a bit. Maybe you can share a beverage with Josh Harris. What do you think?
I don't know how good that'll go.
Maybe after the second one, maybe we should film it and play it back for entertainment purposes only. Right? And the pickle bar led by the barrels and the dills, indeed second to none. Outlet Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. My friend, Neal Coolong, and he is my friend. Welcome, sir.
As always, it's my pleasure to be here. I hope you guys are having a great afternoon.
Let me ask you something. This did come up in the first half hour. We know that there's X amount of people in the country and in the world that have the ability to own sports franchises. And it's at the point now where people are owning multiple sports franchises. Terry Pagula, and I know Terry. He owns the Bills. He owns the Sabres. He also owns the Rochester Americans. We know what John Henry does with Liverpool, the Red Sox, the Penguins, Fenway Roush Racing. Josh Harris owns now the Commanders. He owns the Devils, and he owns the Sixers. How do you feel about a person owning teams in different sports? How have you felt about that? You know, and this is the owner. This is not the organization, but it's still the person that signs the checks. How do you feel about that? Is it any big deal to you at all? I mean, it's not to me.
I think when you dig into it, what you find is this is not Art Rooney having a big day at the track, taking that money to the league office and buying a team, and then he just owns it and runs it. There are several people involved with anything like that. Corporations, which they're now going to allow to happen in terms of ownership. Josh Harris, in this case, is the face, and he represents all of that. It funnels up to him to some degree. But there's not typically a majority owner. There's an acting owner. Right. The Steelers are an example of that. They don't own
That's right.
more than a third of it. So they're in charge, and that was kind of the deal when they would sell off little bits, really just to raise capital, because why not? The deal is, like, you're an owner, you're entitled to X share of the profits, but you really don't have any power except the ability to sit in the box and hang out on the field and stuff. You don't get to do anything with it. There are a lot of people that are contributing in that way. Dare we say Magic Johnson's not the one deciding who the Commander should draft.
Right.
He's very much a part of it, very public part of the image of the team, but he's not day-to-day in charge of it. So if you look at it like that, I have absolutely no insight to what Josh Harris's interests are in any of those franchises, but if he owns, say, 10% of all of them, That's a totally different image than what we're led to believe by the fact that, we're referring to him in print as the owner of the Commanders, not an owner, but the owner of the Commanders.
Right.
He can rack up all of those different interests. And from there, you look at it like this. These guys are billionaires for a reason, and contrary to popular opinion, it's not because their dad gave them a bunch of money and they happen to own Apple stock back in the 80s.
Right.
It's because they have large corporations. They're not, IBM or anything like that. It's something that you probably aren't really fully aware of, but in that they have infrastructure. The biggest thing those guys bring to the table is accounting. They have armies of lawyers and accountants who handle a lot of different stuff. So they have the ability within their own employment to take on a lot of the tasks that go on. That's the stuff that you're never going to hear about behind closed doors, how the hamburger is made, so to speak. When a guy like Harris has X percent of a team, but less than 50% of it,
that's right.
He's contributing, whatever their agreement is, he's contributing those resources as part of his day-to-day duties. And along with that, he's going to be the face. They're all in agreement that he is the quote-unquote owner as far as the public is concerned. So
that's right.
He might be the guy signing the checks, but certainly that money is being pooled together with a lot of other things that other people have interests in. Whatever Magic Johnson's case is, cut is, I have no idea what he's bringing to the table, but he's somebody that's going to speak on behalf of the organization, probably because he's, Magic Johnson, and people kind of expect that. So I don't think that's a problem. I think when you get to a point where, and shame on me, I ran off this point earlier because I don't remember exactly what the purchase price was of the Steelers when Art Rooney bought it, but needless to say, the Commanders went for a few more dollars than the Steelers did back in 1933. So when you get that big, that type of corporation, one person can't possibly do all of that. There are a lot of moving parts within it. You have other people that you're giving interest in the team to bring their expertise, their staffing, personnel, whatever infrastructure-related entities they control that they can help out with. It's a business move, and I think that's really the only way to own something the size of a professional sports team, whether it's in the U.S. or like you mentioned Liverpool, same type of thing, maybe even bigger. To do all of that, you've got to have a lot of different things in order to be successful. So you kind of have to break it up.
Yeah, because I believe it or not, Terry Pegula might be the only single entity owner in the NFL right now. Well, what about Jerry Jones and Robert Kraft? No, they have little pieces here and there. I mean, they are far more than 50%. Right? I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, who knows what the percentage is? They could be 75, 80%. But that's how expensive these franchises are. Josh Harris is the lead owner because he's the majority owner. Right? Just like the Rooneys at 33% are the majority owner. Right? But, I think the situation with the Steelers, I think people figured out when David Tepper finally bought the Carolina Panthers. Oh, he owned X amount of the Steelers? Really? I thought the Rooneys owned all of that. See, people think that, like Jeffrey Lurie doesn't completely own the Eagles. It's hard to do, to have that kind of money to do it.
Yeah, just think of it being that liquid. I mean, it's not like they can, write a check for, the entire payroll for the year. You have $271 million. They aren't going to have that much cash. And a lot of the value that you put into an NFL franchise is in the stadium, which they don't own outright anyway. It's just overall franchise that you're purchasing includes earning power from the stadium. So they have, obviously, obscene amounts of wealth, but it's usually connected into a lot of things. And they're able to, set stuff up based on their interests in a lot of different things. Lurie, you're right, he doesn't own all of the Eagles. He doesn't own all the stadium. These are things that generate revenue for him. Right. He is able to then afford a staff and, following the NFL rules of operations, everything like that, employ a certain amount of people to do certain amounts of things. Those people don't typically come with the Eagles, although there are plenty that do. It's more these people were brought by the owner in the new wave. I mean, Lurie purchased the Eagles, within the last 15 years, I think, right? 20 years.
Right. Yeah.
Harris is a good example because he just bought into the Commanders, and he certainly has had his hands full ever since then, and what a story that's turning out to be. He has to provide all of that infrastructure because Dan Snyder had all of those people previously. Now, you can keep some of them, but odds are when you're investing that much money, you're going to want your own people doing certain things like caps and cash, which is your high-level accounting people. They're the ones that kind of determine what you want to spend on what based on where the personnel department wants everything to go. These are all people that, considering the amount of money and the weight of the decisions that need to be made, the owner's probably going to want somebody that they're comfortable with. They've got some track record with. So they carry in all of that along with the money that they'll need to invest. It's not like the pool goes to the owner coming in. I mean, Harris and company spent a lot of money that went to Daniel Snyder to get the franchise.
That's right.
From there,
That's
the
right.
money that's in there is his. So you've got to pool a lot of investors. You've got to get cash in order to do that. And people just aren't that liquid. And usually it comes down to, in NFL terms, if we want to simplify it, I don't think Art Rooney has the $275 million that they're budgeted to spend come March and throughout the year on their roster salary. That's money that's going to be added to the pool as they go. They get gate revenue. The rev share check comes sometime in March. It's not as if he's got $275 million sitting in his checking account right now. Various interests that they have to pull from, and there are various little pieces that we don't really hear about that get bought and sold all the time. That's how they kind of raise the capital for that. In order to bring in the cash and then use that however they're going to. So it's highly complicated. There's a lot of different moving parts that go into it. But you're right about Pegula. That's pretty much the only individual owner. And again, Pegula represents a family. There's a couple of them. Yeah. So it's a matter of pooling resources together and from there determining what is the most profitable. Jerry Jones feels having the overwhelming majority of everything is best for him, but he has to pay for everything if that's the case. The Rooneys have sold off pieces of their interest because a large part of the family doesn't want to own the team. They know that at that point, Dan ran everything. Now it's Art the second. They're not really invested in a way that's all that meaningful, so they sold out. They got the money when the value was pretty high comparatively from when they got it, and they operate just fine with a third of it being totally within the family.
So now you have a matchup, Philadelphia and Kansas City, second time in 3 years. I know Detroit, their issue was quite simple. In the end, they had too many injuries on defense, and it cooked them. But Detroit had a better offensive day than Philadelphia did against Washington, statistically, except for the biggie, and that's the turnovers. Because they had over 500 yards, and Gibbs was running wild against them. So I wasn't surprised to see the Eagles run wild because they don't turn the ball over. So what do you think of the matchup in this one?
I think breaking it all down, in Kansas City has done a great job of defying conventional thought in a lot of ways. They can still turn the ball over and win, as we've seen. I think the run that they're on, that's largely been because, to put it bluntly, they have dudes. Chris Jones makes plays for four quarters long, all game long. It's extremely difficult to stop Chris Jones from making a play. Steve Spagnuolo, I think, is the best playoff defensive coordinator the game has ever seen. He dials stuff up, and every single playoff game they have, there are critical stretches of time in which his defense completely suffocates the opponent. We saw that on the big fourth down. I was just having a conversation with a buddy of mine about that exact situation. It's like, Spags is going to dial up an absolute meltdown blitz on fourth and ball game like he always does. What does he do this time? He shows you he's doing it, and he does the exact opposite. And he was right. He knew exactly where the hot receiver was going to be. The guy that showed blitz dropped right there. It would have been an interception if Allen threw it there. Allen saw it, but he also saw two guys coming at him. had to scramble around, try to make a play, and frankly, almost did. Maybe that ball should have been caught, but it ended the game. That's
right.
the situation. Spagnuolo is Mariano Rivera of the NFL. He closes games off like that. All of that said, as fascinating as it's been to watch Kansas City do it, hey, Philadelphia's got too many dudes. They're such a balanced team, and they've shown that in these playoffs. Jalen Carter is coming into his own as one of the best defensive players in the game. Saquon Barkley, if you had a playoff MVP, I think he's that right now. Jalen Hurts is playing his best football. And the bedrock of the offensive and defensive line that they have and that they've assembled over the last couple of years still stand up as being top shelf, top of the game. I think this is the one team Kansas City isn't going to be able to just out-guile. I think Philadelphia is the team that can throw punches and keep them down. I think, really, I saw what the opening line was Kansas City by 1.5. I'm like, I'll take that all day. Philadelphia is just a very, very difficult team to beat where they are now. And I think a large part of that is just because they've assembled so much talent. They've done so well in the draft, retained the right guys, kind of re-strategized after a little bit of a rough go last year, got everything going, and they peaked at the right time, unlike Detroit, who had a real off game offensively despite 500 yards. That's how good they were. Right. Can't turn the ball over, but Philadelphia has explosive plays without turnovers, and I don't think Kansas City does that quite as well. And Kansas City is not going to be able to get the late lead and then hold off the opponent the way that they just did to Buffalo. I think Philadelphia is able to get up by 10, 14 points and make Kansas City play comeback football late this time around. I think they're going to take it.
Yeah, Philadelphia has Smith, Brown, Goddard, Barkley. I thought Hurts played the best game of his season Sunday. I thought he was outstanding. The offensive line, Carter. I'll tell you, let me give you a guy that's an under-the-radar guy, and he's undersized. And Jalen Daniels did a good job most of the game, but this is one where he made a mistake. It was in the fourth quarter, and Eckler to his right, and he should have moved him. I kept thinking, why is he not moving him to the left? Because Smith had lined up opposite the slot receiver. I don't think he saw him. But Nolan Smith, to me, especially with Brandon Graham being out for the year, he quietly has been a really terrific impact player for the Eagles.
Yeah, this is what I mean. That's not going to be the first, second, or third guy that you even talk about. And I know exactly what play you're talking about. I think that's a great observation simply because I don't think Daniels saw it, but I think Smith saw it. I think he knew where that was going to go. They were probably out of formation a little bit. Not to rip on Daniels a whole lot, just considering the rookie with the new head coach. Remarkable for them to have gone as far as they did, and certainly the wheels fell off. And I think I said last week that Washington's a plucky team and they're a lot of fun. I think they're going to give you a fight, but Philadelphia's going to walk away with that game in the fourth quarter and just watch. And it got way worse than I even thought that it would.
No
question. Plays like that, it just goes to show you're not seeing Hurts miss those kinds of things anymore. They've done a sensational job preparing him to stay within what they need him to do. And he does a really good job when he is structured, when they've got the right stuff working around him. And I know that makes it sound like I'm saying that he's not a top-tier quarterback. Every offensive coordinator would love to have this situation. They know what they're good at. They have multiple variations of the things that they're good at. And Hurts is able to make all of those reads. He can see where the ball needs to go. And then you mentioned they got superstars all over the board. Let's keep in mind, they played a while without Goddard. Not that it's easy stopping their receivers to begin with, but you put that guy down the seam with everything else. They all ate. Barkley gets the headlines, and rightfully so. I mean, it took him 6 seconds to make a huge impact on the game. But everybody ate in that game. And that's really what they do as an offense. They're so deep. They have so much stability. I think Sirianni does a great job in Kafka of making everything accessible for everybody else. You really can't prepare for any one tendency. There's just so many different things that they can do.
Yeah, tough team to get ready for. There are certain X-factor guys along the way. like Nick Bolton to me is an X Factor guy. I mean, I think he's a terrific player. I think Karl Loftus is an X Factor guy. But what I find interesting is what you said about Spagnuolo. I mean, he picks his spots to be aggressive and ultra-aggressive. But then let's go to Andy on the other side. Late in the game, what's the tendency of most coaches late in the game protecting a lead? Well, we're going to run the ball and we'll punt it. He threw the ball to Pacheco, then ran the exact same play to the left side to Pirine and won the game. If it's incomplete, so let's stop the clock, whatever. But he thinks differently than other coaches.
I think Reed has the experience. I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. He has enough experience to say, I know what got us here. And my hunch is when they sit down and go over their offensive game plan, they talk about situational football. And the thing that they say is, we understand what the convention here is. We're supposed to run the ball, but you know what? This is how we run the ball. So we are running the ball. You need to catch it, and you need to get upfield, and you need to stay in bounds. That's your job. And that's what he does. You know, it reminded me of, when 2021, the Browns had them kind of going deep, and the Browns had a shot at it at the end. And I think Mahomes got hurt, and Chad Henne had to come on. And he threw with Chad Henne on 4th and 6 or something like that, where incomplete pass. They punt back to Cleveland, who has a chance to win the game with a field goal. That's as gutsy as it gets. You know, I don't care who you're playing. That's a gutsy move. One that could have defined his legacy at that point. It wouldn't be on the streak that they're on without that play. But he coaches his team to make that play in that situation. It's interesting also because you look back at poor Dan Quinn, 14 plays went absolutely wrong for him in the second half of a Super Bowl that he probably coached better than any coach ever has in the first half of that game. Nothing worked for him. Andy Reid knows how to win the situation. He knows how to play situational football and force you to play on his terms. Because now what he's going to do, this is what happened to Buffalo. How many times can you launch Josh Allen over the pile for a 4th and short? Right. The Chiefs don't have to do that. They can go wide on you because they will complete that pass 100% of the time. You will not get the pressure you need to disrupt that pass. You're not going to tip it back behind the line. Nothing's going to go wrong except the one time I think they did it. It's a quick catch and release. Your quarterback doesn't get his hands on the seam. Was the one they threw to Kelsey. That Kelsey just kind of biffed. It didn't come out of Mahomes' hand the right way. They don't always do that. But with the exception of that, watch every receiver. They're so well coached and they're disciplined. They're catching the ball and then they're getting upfield because Reed is drilling into them. Our priority is the completion. We want the first down, obviously. We feel you'll get that. You will not get it if you drop it. Catch the ball. It's going to be on target, then get upfield. It's things like that. That's what makes them a championship-level team. Go down the line. It gives them the dynamic ability to run a lot of different things in those situations. Buffalo, they didn't lose because of this, but they don't have another play. That was the only play they had. You knew it was coming. You put it into the ref's hands, bad things can happen to you. But you go for 4th down that many times in the same play, you're not getting all of them. The Chiefs, though, could go 4 for 4 with a variety of different plays.
Because remember, Kansas City has not done what Buffalo tried to do in the game since Mahomes got hurt against Cleveland a few years ago. They haven't gone under center and run a quarterback sneak since. All right. My friend, thanks so much. We'll preview the Super Bowl next week. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Neal Coolong. Ohio State released their financial numbers. It was not pretty. We'll talk about it next half hour.
There's something to be said about a sale with a handshake, a service technician who really knows what he's doing. They can explain it in English what the problem is. There's nothing better than having that friend you could trust in the area. That's Sunbury Motors, where you get selection, knowledgeable salespeople, and prices that fit your budget, and more important, that friend you can trust. Welcome to Sunbury Motors, Kia, Ford, and Hyundai. You could shop other dealers and compare prices, but at Sunbury Motors, you get their lowest price promise. They research the current used vehicle market and guarantee their used car prices are the lowest. If you find a lower price, Sunbury Motors will beat it. 3 dealers all in one. See their full new and pre-owned inventory at sunburymotors.com. Pick out a vehicle you like and schedule your test drive online. Follow them on Facebook. Sunbury Motors Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.